Okay, we're gonna get started on our painting. It looks like everybody is here. So what I'm gonna do is just going to get things started. Just hold this up for another minute, just in case anybody is unsure about what colors that we'll be using tonight. And I'm also gonna put everybody on mute, but of course, if you have any questions at any point, just take yourself off mute. Another way that you can also, if you have any questions, you can message me or text me. Sometimes people like to take a picture of what they're working on and send over a text. And that way I can kind of zoom in on it and see if there's anything specifically that I can help you with that particular step. All right. So we're going to get started now. Get this a little easier to access. Okay, so we're going to be working on, there has actually been a great deal of debate over what these flowers actually are, but there are a local flower expert of all kinds, Sophie, has informed me today that we are actually working on miniature sunflowers. So,
my daughter must be coming up right behind me because she just said, they're sunflowers. Like, we should totally know. Wait, what were they?
I saw them on the side of the road and I just thought they were so beautiful. I took a picture and I just kind of assumed they were some kind of yellow daisy. But that is not what they are. They are miniature sunflowers, which makes a little more sense. They do rather look like sunflowers. So we're gonna have a whole lot of fun working on these flowers today. Now I have these set up in a certain pattern that kind of works, helps your eye kind of move through the painting. That is part of the composition. And it's kind of important to try to get the flowers in a similar arrangement, but don't worry about it being exactly the same. So if you notice, I'm just going to kind of point this out to you before we get started. And that way you can kind of be thinking about this as you're working on your painting, because you're putting your own flowers on here. Okay, so if you notice, your eye is taking a bit of a trip through the painting, and it starts down in this corner. Your eye is being drawn through by the largest flower here. That's kind of pulling your eye up into the painting. And then we have this connection of flowers that kind of come in to make a spiral. That is one way of designing a composition for a painting. And it happens to be my most intuitive way of painting. I do it all the time and have no idea I'm doing it consciously until after I look at it and say, oh, that's my spiral design again. We see it everywhere in nature. You see it in flowers all the time. And it's just kind of a very intuitive sort of composition. So keep that in mind when we're working on this painting. When you're placing your flowers, try to get something of a spiral design going into your pattern of the flowers. You can even use the stems as part of your design. You don't have to, but you can. So let's get started. We're gonna have to get the background finished before we can go anywhere near these flowers. So let's just work on our background first, and then we'll have fun with the flowers. Okay, the brushes that we're gonna be using today, I'm using for the background, a large flat brush like this to cover a good amount of area. You could also use a flat brush like this. I will also be using a medium-sized round brush, something like that. And I added a little bit of a small flat brush like this, just to get some of those flower petals like to have a little bit of a corner going on there. So this really does help if in getting the little edges in our flower petals. And then one last brush, just a small detail brush of some kind, just when we're bringing in some little details with the stems. This is nice to have. Okay, so let's get started. Hopefully everybody's got their bowl of water. And I'm going to start with my large flat brush and just get the sky going. I am using phthalo blue in my sky, but you really can use any blue that you have in the sky. I just happened to choose that one to work with, but it looks great with all different kinds of blues. So use whatever you have. If you want it to look like mine, mostly, go with the phthalo blue. So let's start, large brush. I'm gonna go right into my blue paint. Take a nice big scoop of blue paint. We're gonna be mixing up a good amount of this. Nice big scoop of blue paint. And then I'm just gonna mix in maybe half of that white that I have over there. And it's just lightening up my blue a bit, but it's still a really deep, beautiful blue. You can even add a little bit of water to your mixture to get it to blend better for you. So that's just a little bit of phthalo blue, a little bit of white. And let's get started. Up in the sky. This is very quick, no details at all. Just kind of working in the color into the sky. Now, I'm actually going to take this color everywhere in the painting. This is even going to come down into the flower area. Let's just get the whole canvas covered, or whatever you're working on. I did want to mention, I generally work on canvas with my paintings. But you can also work on canvas board if you prefer that. You can work on a watercolor paper or some kind of thick vellum type paper, works just as well. But I love the bounce of the canvas. When you hit it with the brush, it kind of bounces back. I like that. Okay. Now, as I get lower into the sky, I'm not going to be go as heavy with my paint, because there's going to be a lot of white in here. So I'm just going to kind of skip the middle a little bit and fill in down here with my darker blue. Just kind of skip over that middle a little bit. I'll come back to that in just a moment.
What if we got carried away and already made it all blue?
That's good. I like that you got carried away, but don't worry about it. You'll just go a little heavier with your white when you come into the center. It's no problem. I just thought of it as I was starting. And you're a very fast painter, Sophie. Now, as I come towards the center, I'm going to start lightening up my paint. I'd say right about down here somewhere. And that is just going to, I'm just adding white to that wet paint. So just right on top of it, just adding some white to lighten up that area. And you know, I find the faster I do this, the more I like it. I don't know what it is, but this background looks great when it's very loosely painted in. Maybe because there's so much detail in the flowers. I just feel like it looks best loosely painted in. If you notice, I'm just moving my brush in kind of quick, erratic sort of movements, nothing too structured here. And now I'm gonna add more white into my center, right on top of things. I'm building up some white, especially towards the center. And I'm going kind of heavy with the white. I want to see some visible brush strokes of pure white. And I'm kind of using a little bit of a crisscross motion, if you look at that. This is just kind of gathering a little hint of what might be some clouds in the sky. And it really does help to move your brush around in all different directions. I'm doing this. See how I'm almost like doing large boxy strokes, brush strokes. Almost done. Okay, so now I'm going to continue on and start getting this background. Let's see. I'm going to start getting this background kind of grassy area in here. Now I have two different layers going on with the foliage here. I have a very soft muted green that just goes off into the background. And then I have this deeper, more vibrant green in the foreground that's mixed with our deeper blue. So to start with, the way I want to get that really soft muted green off in the background is I'm just going to take that same large brush and use the same light blue I was just using in the sky. So kind of continue on with that same light blue, only this time I'm going to add a bit of green to it. Now starting with just a little bit of green. Just starting with a little bit of green. And this will give me a very kind of soft, muted green that I can start working with. And I'd like to have it come in at like a little bit of a curve like this. See how it's kind of curved down? And all I'm going to do is use those very simple brush strokes where I'm just kind of crisscrossing to bring in a little layer of foliage here in the background. You're not going to see this too much against the sky. It's really very similar to the sky color, just a little hint different. And I have to make a little bit more here. So that was just a combination of white and blue with a little bit of green. Okay, so just getting a little layer of very soft foliage going on. You don't see any detail in this, just a little something against the sky. Some backdrop. It's just a little layer right here. And you can even add a little bit of white if you want to get a bit of highlight to the ones in the background. Adding a tiny bit of white to that mixture will give you a little bit of like light hitting foliage in the background. But this is just a support for what we're going to put down in front. Okay. Let me just hold this up a little bit closer so you can kind of get a feel for that. See, there's really not that much detail going on here. So now I'm going to bring in a little bit more pop, a little more color to pull the foliage a little more into the foreground. So this is more of a true green. There's some blue-green down here. And maybe even a little bit of yellow to bring in a little bit of vibrancy here too. Okay, so let's start this right now. We're gonna start by using that same large brush. I'm actually gonna switch to a little bit of a smaller one. I'm using an especially large brush for demonstration, but a little bit smaller. Okay, so I'm gonna do a mixture of green and blue, half and half, green and blue. Get a nice dark color to start. You can add a little bit of water to it too if you like. Okay, and this is where I'm getting my deepest, darkest shadows of foliage in here. But again, no detail at all just yet. We'll get some detail in shortly, but I'm kind of using the same technique I've been using through everything, just kind of crisscrossing my brush, getting lots of movement. This is a combination of blue and green. It's our deepest shadow, and we're gonna get a nice little layer of it down here at the bottom of the canvas. So again, blue, green, right about half and half. Using a bit of a crisscross. And don't worry at all if some of the canvas shows through from the background. That is a good thing. It's going to give us depth. Let's just do a little layer of it. Maybe right about there. Okay. So I know someone just joined, so I just want to kind of quickly go through while everybody else is working on this step, getting this little layer of darker in here. I just want to do a quick refresher on what we started with. So the palette was blue. I used phthalo blue, but you can use any blue that you want. Green, red, white, and yellow. Starting in the sky, just a mixture of white and blue, just getting the whole sky filled in, going lighter as it goes down with more white, and then getting some little hints of white kind of clouds going on up in the sky. Okay, so that's just the start. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is bring in another layer of foliage down here. This time I'm going to start getting a little bit more detailed with my brush strokes. Oh my goodness. That is so adorable. She doesn't look nervous at all. Her name is Tally, right? Super cute. Okay, so with that large brush, I'm gonna go in, same color combination but this time I'm actually gonna take a little bit more green in there. Go a little heavier in the green and even add a little bit of yellow to it. A little bit of green, a little bit of yellow, adding a little bit of yellow in there. And maybe just the tiniest hint of white as well to lighten it up a bit. Okay, so this is where I want my top layer. This is kind of going to be just between the darker layer and this foliage off in the background. And I'm just creating what could look like some leaves. So a little more detail, going a little bit thicker with the brush stroke. And I'm using the brush I'm using the shape of the brush to kind of create some sort of leaf-like shapes. And they're kind of blending over each other too. I don't know if you can see that or not, but just creating a little bit more color in there. So that was blue, our mixture of blue-green. I added a little bit of yellow, tiny bit of white. And this time I'm starting to get some actual, a little bit more detail in there that might look like leaves. So I'm kind of working up into Oops, I went right over my background there. That's okay. Just have a few leaves coming up there. And you can even have a little bit of this coming down over your darker blue as well. You want to layer it. Green, yellow, and a tiny bit of white. Okay, so it looks something like this. So now we're going to go on to the next step. I think this part is really fun. I am just going to take my small detail brush, this size, and I'm going to mix a combination, that same blue-green mixture that I used on the darkest part of the foliage, blue and green, darkest part. I'm going to get a nice mixture and add a little bit of water so it's very easy to spread that color. Mixture of blue and green. And the first thing I like to do in this picture is, I think this just makes such an interesting little part of the design right in the center. It's almost like a little figure eight that comes up and creates a little bowl in here that our flowers sit in. So starting in the center somewhere, making a little almost figure eight. It's like an open figure eight, if you can imagine that. So a little twisty turn, and I'll show you how I did that. And I'm using my small detail brush and a mixture of blue and green, starting in the center. And I'm just gonna come on up like this. And just go like that. Might have to go over it a few times to get your colors in there. And then coming up on the other side. Yeah, it really helps to add a little bit of water to it as well. Just something like that. It doesn't have to be exactly like that. But it gives it a really interesting foundation in the painting. I really like. And that's just a mixture of blue and green. You may have to go over it a few times to get it to stick. Now, once you have that shape in there, you can kind of have fun with your other stems, bringing them in where you feel like they should be. But one thing I'm going to recommend is some stems you want to go off in this direction, some you want to go off in this direction, and maybe a few come right across the center. So using that same small brush, just start bringing in some right from the bottom, some little stems that are coming up, some to the right. Boy, it does help to add water to this. So, some to the left, and they don't have them go off the page. They're gonna, because we want to put flowers on them. So have them stop somewhere in the sky. You need to get flowers, or at the very least some foliage. A few that go in this direction. And they don't all have to have a flower connected to them. But this is where you start thinking about where you're going to place your flowers too. Like I want one that's going to come up right about here. I want one that's going to come up right about here. I want one somewhere near the center. I want one, nice big one down here. Of course, you can always add the stems in after you put the flowers in as well. Okay, so now we're going to start getting in a little more definition in the leaves. So I'm just going to show you a little bit close up here. If you notice, the leaves are kind of a simple shape, not much detail at all. But the ones in the front are a little bit larger as they come closer to this flower. Also, we've got some little buds that haven't quite flowered yet over here. These are kind of neat looking. I'll show you how to do those too. And these as well. They haven't quite flowered yet. Let's get a couple of those in there. But we'll start, before we even come close to our flowers, let's get the leaves and the buds in there. All right. So I am going to use this smaller flat brush for this. So this is a flat brush, but if you notice the difference in size, see, that's also a flat brush. It's just significantly smaller. This way you can get some really nice details and nice little curves in there. Okay, so I'm going to use that smaller flat brush. And I'm just going to do my blue-green to start, blue and green together. And add a little bit of water if you like. And let's just start somewhere, on one of these stems. Let's just bring a nicely defined leaf in there. You decide where. And these are a little closer to us, so I'm making them a little bit larger. And then once you get it in there, that shape, just kind of fill it in. They don't have to look exactly like this either. Your leaves could be entirely different than mine. Something like that. Now let's go through, and we're going to add highlights to them afterwards, but just to start, let's get the basic foundation of some of these leaves in here. And if you're needing to see a little bit of a close-up of the shape, just a little bit wider, and they kind of come to a point like that. Okay. So they just go a little bit wider in the center and then come to a little bit of a point. Wider into a point. These are darker blue-green right now, but we'll fill them in a little more detail afterwards. And just try to get maybe one or two on each stem if you can. Remember you can do smaller ones for in the background too. And they can overlap each other too. So making some of my leaves smaller, some a little bit bigger. There you go, just so you can kind of see a little closer. Now, once you've got a little layer of just kind of a base of your shadow, I just want to show you how to get some highlights on there. It's just a matter of adding a little bit of green, a little bit of yellow and white to your green. So just a combination of green, yellow, and white. And you don't even have to do it everywhere on the petal. You can even just do the top part and maybe fill in a little bit of it. So that's green, yellow, and white for the highlight. Just get a little tiny bit of a brightness to the leaf, especially in the top. So just bringing in little bits of highlight, especially towards the tops of these leaves. And that's green, yellow, and white. And some could have a little more of a highlight, some a little less. It's kind of up to you. Okay, so now while I've still got that green and blue-green on my brush, I want to start getting in a few of these little buds in here. These are so simple. There really is very little detail, if any, in there. Very easy to make those. So let me just show you. I'm going to use that same brush I was just using, this one here, and go on into my blue-green to start off. Blue-green for starters. And let's say there's one over here on the right side. Let's just get a little, it's almost like a little, what shape would I call this? Almost like a little oval. It's just the start of a little bud. And then just fill it in Maybe let a few little spikes come along the outer edge of it. Just feel like it's about to open up. Almost there. There we go. Can you see that? I don't know if that makes it any easier to see. Okay, so I'm just going to do a couple more of those in the painting. And maybe one over here. It doesn't even have to be connected to a stem. You could make up a stem that it goes to. A shape like that, and a bud shape, and little spikies coming from it. And maybe there's a couple of small ones in there too. Okay. Now, once you have the shadow part in there, you would just add a little bit of your highlight color and just give it to the outer edges, just give it a little bit of a shine, especially towards the top. A little hint of a highlight in there. Here, let me get a picture of that. Just to see it up close if you like. See how it's just a little hint of a highlight on the top? Again, it's up to you how many of those little buds you want to have around your flowers. I just want a couple of them. Okay, so now that I'm going to bring in this one right here. It's like a little, like it's got the bulb in the center, but everything's still green. So that just gives it an interesting sort of shape. So let's get that one in there. It's the same thing. It's that mixture of blue and green, same brush. I'm going to bring mine in right here, and all I'm going to do is give it a little bit of a side, a little like a bulge to it, like that. A little lump to the left, kind of like that. Okay, and then put a few petals that are just kind of starting out there. Just a couple of these little hints of petals coming from it, or hints of something like that. And if you don't like it, you don't even have to put it in there. Or you could try it, and if you really don't like it, you just do a flower on top of it. And of course, once you've got that foundation of it in, just add your highlight color on top in a few little spots. Brighten it up a bit. Your highlight color in this case is white, yellow, and green. Here's a little bit of a close-up of it. Okay, so the time has come to get these beautiful flowers in here. Let's start with the largest one so that we can get it out of the way. And everything else will be so easy after that. So we're going to start working in this one down here. If you notice, this is kind of towards the left side of the painting, the lower left side. That's an important part of the composition. And it's a pretty good size. It takes up a good chunk of this lower left side of the painting. So keep in mind how big you want this to be. You know, it's like a little smaller than my hand, I would say, but it's, of course, everybody's hands are different sizes, but you know what I mean. It's a good size flower. So let's get started on that flower. I am going to use that same brush I have been working on the leaves with. Give it a really good rinse though. This is the flat, smaller flat brush. So let's try and get every ounce of green off of there. I mean, give it a really good rinse. Okay, going to start with a, I'm gonna make it purple first to get the center part in. Okay, so mixing, actually, hold on one second. We're gonna put this brush on pause for just a moment. I forgot, we actually need our round brush to make the center. So round brush for the center, okay? And let's do a mixture of blue and red together. Make a little bit of purple. Blue and red. We want this to be a nice dark bluish purple. And you know, once you've got your nice dark purple, One thing you can do to make it even a little bit darker, maybe even a little bit browner, is bring in the tiniest bit of yellow. I know it sounds funny, but it works great to make a really pretty yellow, a really pretty color for the center of the flower. So just bringing in a teeny tiny bit of yellow works very nice here. So I'm just going to mix in very little, just a little bit of yellow. It's a nice center color. Okay, so once you got your center color, it's decision time about where this flower is going to go. I'm going to plop mine down right in the lower left corner. This is just going to be the center. I'm just going to place a little circle there, right about the size of a quarter. On mine, it's the size of a quarter. Okay. Right about the size of a quarter. Now, while we've got this purple on our brush, we're going to plan out where all the flowers are going to go. And remember how I said, try to get yourself a little bit of a spiral effect going on. So I've got this one down here. Let's get another one on the right side, somewhere over here on the right side. You can even add it, if you don't have a stem there, you could just add one in afterwards. So somewhere on the right side, you could always add a stem in there. I'm going to make this a little bit of a smaller one. This one's about the size of a dime for me. It's just a little circle. Then I'm going to come up a little bit higher and in, coming in a little bit. These are going to be also nice big quarter size circles. And again, don't worry too much about the placement of the stems. Always come back in and add stems afterwards. And then towards the top here, let's get a nice big one, almost as big as that one at the bottom. Okay. I'm just kind of going with the same pattern that I have in my sample. And how about over here, we do a little one. We don't want to have two large ones up here. Maybe a little one and another little one down here. Maybe one towards the center of the painting. Let's see, how about right about here, a little bit larger. And I'm using the same pattern that you see in this painting. And then you've got a couple little ones over here to the left. So maybe one here. Maybe another one over here. Okay, we've got something of a foundation here, or something of a plan as to where our flowers are going to go. And you could add a few more in. If you do, I would make them small, just little background ones that you might see off in the distance. Or you could wait and add those in later. And this is probably a good point to take a moment and get fresh water, actually, because we're going to be going into an entirely different color combination. And sometimes it's really nice to have fresh water when you're going with lighter colors here. This part is a lot of fun. So we're going to get this large flower in first. I'm using this, this small flat brush. And the reason I'm using this is because I can kind of twist and turn it to get a nice point to it. First thing I want to do though is get a nice light orange color. So I'm going to use one of my yellows, mix it with a teeny tiny bit of red, just a little bit of red to get a nice bright light orange. So just a little bit of red, good amount of yellow. Get a nice light bright orange and make a good pile of this. We're going to be using quite a bit of this light orange. Okay, so once you've got your light orange here, come on into your, we're going to do our first one just perfectly rounded. Come on into that. Oh, this is a mixture of yellow, mostly yellow with a little bit of red. Okay. Nice light orange. Yeah. Okay, so using your brush, that small flat brush, we're gonna make our first petal. So as you get to the outer part of the petal, you're gonna let the brush twist so it comes to a point. So let me just show that up close so you can see it. So you start with a nice flat brush stroke. Here, I'll do one. I'm gonna do like a little windmill around here. Nice flat brush stroke. Pull the brush stroke out, and as it goes out, start to twist your brush so it comes to a point. Okay, let me take a close-up picture of that so you can see it easier. But this is kind of the foundation. And it's good to see one or two petals just kind of at the before we get any detail in there, just to kind of see the basic shape of those petals. Okay, can everybody see? Oops, there we go. Can everybody see that okay? So see how they have a point on the end? That comes from twisting your brush a little bit, so it gives them a little bit of a point. If you're having any trouble with this step, just send me a picture and maybe we could switch out the brush. Okay, I'm gonna keep going with it. So what I'm gonna do is just start with 4 petals, making their way around that center, kind of equally. Like a little sunburst. And don't worry about it going over other things. Okay, so once you've got your 4 petals, you just kind of fill in what's in between them. Once you get used to this, you can make these super fast. And they'll start to overlap each other. This is a very important part here. Keep going. They're going to start overlapping each other. So me take a picture. And just so you can kind of see up close. If anybody wants to see this in any detail, just going to hold it right up to the screen for a few minutes. And feel free to add as many petals as you want in there with the orange, or you, oops. So once you've got one of these petals down, or one of these flowers down, go ahead and keep going with it and get them all, at least the orange part of them in there. And then we'll start putting the highlights on top of them, okay? You may have to make more of that orange. You're gonna need a good amount of it. So each of your flowers. Now, if your flower bumps into something else, you can decide if the flower goes over it or under it. For instance, here, my flower is gonna bump into what I really loved, that little bud there. So I'm gonna have my petal go under it. I'm not gonna have the petal go over it. I'm gonna have it go under it. Because I'm the artist and I get to decide that. Now remember, some of these are smaller. Use shorter petals for smaller flowers. And you can kind of experiment a little bit with this too if you want to have your petals turning in different directions. Have fun with it. You could make some a little brighter orange than others. And remember, these ones at the top are huge. They're almost as big as this one down here. So remember to make nice big petals for these guys. I think I might have gone too big with this. And they might bump into each other too, and that's okay. And when two flowers bump into each other, you decide which one goes on top and which one goes under. Probably the one that you did first will end up going under. Oh, wow, I went way bigger with my flowers this time than I did in the sample. I guess you just never know when that's going to happen. Now these little ones, try to get them as small as you can. Let them be off in the distance somewhere. Now, I know some of you are still working on the orange part of the flowers, but I'm going to demonstrate how to start getting your bright light highlights in there. And you can kind of do that at your own pace as we go. I'm going to kind of continue on with that same brush, give it a little bit of a rinse. That same flat brush, small flat brush. And this time I'm going to do a mixture of yellow, mostly yellow, with a little bit of white to really get it to pop. If you do just plain yellow, it's not going to be, it'll be a little more transparent, but if you do yellow with white, then it's going to really pop. Okay, so yellow with a little bit of white. And now I'm going to kind of come in between the petals that I already have there. Put a nice little layer in there. And just get maybe 4 petals like this that are just super bright right in the front. They go kind of right over the other petals, just to start it. Nice and bright. Okay, once you've got your 4 in there, just kind of keep on going. It's okay if it goes over some of the petals you already have. You're getting a nice, you want those to be kind of underneath. This is a layer on top of that. Now, if you lose all of your orange, you could always bring a little bit back in there and into the petal if you want to. Vinny, shoo, shoo. No. So again, if you lose all of your orange, just bring a little bit back in. See how this really looks nice when you've got it in layers. And then once you've got that, you take all of your petals now and bring a nice bright highlight to the tips of all of them. Even the orangey ones in the back. Get a nice bright highlight coming in. So you may have to add a little bit more white to your yellow as you go along. So on this one, I lost a little bit of my center. I'm going to have to bring that back in. Just so you can kind of see where it's going. And that's okay if you lose a bit of your center. And you know, everybody's flowers can look a little different. The one I did in the sample had much less petals. Sometimes you can go a little crazy with the petals, but it still looks good. So everybody's is going to look a little different. This one just has a lot more layers to it. And again, I'll have to bring in more of the center after I'm done. So once you've got that one done, go ahead and bring that white and yellow combination into your other flowers. Oh, no. can always use your small brush if you want to get some little details toward the ends. Get your petals looking a little pointier. I'm using a good amount of white, especially at the very ends of my petals, to get them to pop a little bit. Again, if you lose your center, if you lose the brightness in your center of petals, you can always bring it back in there. Just a little bit of orange. Okay. If you lose the center, you can just bring it back at any point. And at any point, you can go in with your small brush to make a little bit more detail in your petals. If you kind of lost some detail like I did in through here, you could always go in with your small brush and a very light whitish yellow to get a little more definition in some of those petals, especially towards the end. It's easy to lose the definition there. You can also use this small brush for creating some little highlights within the dark part of the flower. And all you would do is just kind of dot with a small brush, dot a little semicircle around the top part of the darkest part of the center. I'm using a dotting sort of motion, just a little semicircle along the top part, the center of the flower, just to give it a little highlight. So this small brush just kind of comes in towards the end for details, just the details, the little highlights, to kind of clean up some of those petals that went a little crazy. A small brush works really good for this. So small brush, white and yellow, and help carve out some details in the petals if you lost the detail. This part is a little bit time consuming, but that's okay because you're painting and having fun. Hopefully having fun. Oh, I love it. Sophie's got a ladybug in there, and that is just absolutely brilliant. Very, very cute, Sophie.
That's darling. That is so cute.
Isn't that adorable?
Adorable.
It doesn't look like it was very difficult to do. Sophie, do you mind if I steal your idea and demonstrate it in case somebody else wants to put it in there? I mean, we've already got red on our palette as it is, so why not?
Esa la vimos. Ya la vimos. Ya la vimos.
Let's get this adorable little ladybug in here. We'll have to decide where it goes. So just a little, about right here, a little bump of red. And this could be a really nice part of your composition too. And add to your, moving your eye through the painting. Just a little shell of red. And maybe just a tiny little highlight on the top of white to just give it a little, where the sun is going to hit it. A little curl. And then just go in with a dark color, maybe your dark purple or dark blue, any dark color will do, or you could use black. And just give it a little cute little head, little ladybug head. Maybe some little antlers coming up or whatever they have. That's way too much. And then just a couple little black polka dots. So cute. I love it, Sophie. Mine is a super intuitive ladybug because it's got little antennas, just huge antennas coming out there. Very nice. Okay, so I'm going to call my painting finished here. And I did record this painting so that I can send out copies to anybody who would like to try it again, which you can absolutely do.